So Gordon and I worked on a fundraiser for the Dallas Producers Association, and it was called It Came From Dallas. And we started on that in 2005, and it was a fundraiser to raise money for the TXMPA to start that off. And it was very successful in starting that off, and they're going strong today. So we had 10 of these fundraisers between 2005 and 2017. We had a couple of here, why don't you hand this to him? Okay. And so after 10 years, the Dallas Producers Association was kind of done with it. And the thing about that was we would have these fundraisers, but really it was we could only see the trailers and sort of snippets from the films. And then Gordon and other people would talk about, making of the film and sort of where it was made in the area. And then we would just show those snippets. And so I was always like, gosh, I really wanted to see the full film. And it just kind of never happened. So this idea has been brewing since 2005. And I brought Gordon in because I call Gordon he's basically the unofficial B-movie film historian that specializes in Texas films. And so so I want Gordon to talk about that and just talk about your background.
Okay, well, I do consider myself a film historian in all genres, whether it's,
Yes.
Schindler's List or The Giant Gila Monster, but I have a particular liking for B-movies and particular interest in those made in Texas. There's great stories of some kind or other behind just about every one of them. I'm a teacher, occasional actor over the years. I'm a filmmaker, editor, producer. I write some of the scripts for Ben Mankiewicz on Turner Classic Movies, and produce a lot of tribute reels for film festivals. I greatly enjoy events like this where we get to talk about the stuff people have been growing up with, seeing in a lot of mediums over the decades.
So Gordon, why B-movies? I mean, what was the attraction to B-movies? Why is this one of your favorite genres?
Well, for one thing, it was that although all kinds of movies got shown at drive-ins, I mean, A-plus movies down to the cheapest ones, but that was about the only place you could see those, either at a drive-in or a grindhouse. Where I grew up in Lubbock, they had both. They had one grindhouse called the State Theater, where I would see a lot of these things, and then the drive-ins. And those were mostly the ones that were, the horror, sci-fi, monster, and horror movies, science fiction. Several key films happened in like the 60s and 70s to make those acceptable to the very big budget productions to be seen, by all levels. But there's just a certain air to the B movies that is just kind of irresistible. To see what they did on very, very limited budgets, So, and the stories behind the making of them, the fact that, although sadly not on one of the ones we're showing, but a lot of stars got started in a B movie. Clint Eastwood did, Tom Hanks did, lots of people did. George Clooney did, So to see also that kind of story behind them.
Do you feel like B movies are great because they don't take themselves too seriously and it's really just for pure entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, they generally go under titles like genre or exploitation. Nobody expects great things from them. They just expect a good time. But, occasionally one rises above the rest and winds up meaning something to the culture at large. Night of the Living Dead did that, in a way. Texas Chainsaw Massacre did that. or sets a precedent like both of those did, and like Halloween did, that just did something that revolutionized that genre, and they're just endlessly imitated to this day. Like those three films are, they all were game changers in one way or another.
But a lot of people don't realize or know that a lot of these B movies, a lot of these B movies are low budget films, found its home here in Dallas. You got Gordon McClendon, who was a big fan of it and would finance these films. You got William Sparkman, who ran the Sparkman Funeral Home, and he was an amateur filmmaker and would make a lot of these films. So take this into the history of, these B movie films being made here in Dallas by Dallasites.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas and the state as a whole, we started out as Kelly mentioned, talking about ones made in the DFW area, but they've been made around the state, although a lot of the most interesting ones made around Dallas. And a lot of them just grew out of non-feature filmmaking, like companies that eventually started up here, like Jameson Films and others that were there to make industrial films or educational films or government films, commercials. Even the little sidebar to that is most of those little animated things that were used as filler in the drive-ins between the features were made in Dallas by a company called K&H Productions.
That's so cool.
And but also there was money in Texas, particularly in the oil industry, and some of these were due to the fact of oil men deciding that they wanted to invest money in something and wanted to get into the lucrative film trade. That's how some of the ones we're talking about and going to be showing actually got made. Like Beyond the Time Barrier and The Amazing Transparent Man. That kind of opened up for the ones that followed. We have two men, producers, directors, filmmakers in history of Dallas area itself, who really paved the way for independent feature filmmaking everywhere. And they were just about the only ones doing it between the West Coast and the East Coast. That's Spencer Williams in the 1940s and Larry Buchanan starting in the late 50s going up to the early 70s. And just about they were the only ones doing that between Hollywood and New York, West Coast and the East Coast. And they both, and it was important, they were both prolific in making them. They both made a lot of movies, even some that never got seen or only seen a few times, whatever, but they managed to survive. I mean, one of Spencer Williams' films is in the Library of Congress film collection. Mm-hmm. I sorted out anything Larry Buchanan did. We'll be invited into the
you never know.
Show up in the Library of Congress. I'm pulling for Zontar Thing for Venus, but still, they're very important. They laid an infrastructure for filmmaking, for feature filmmaking in Dallas, but other places as well. And the success of like the ones that these oil guys invested in laid the groundwork for the ones that came after it. Also, it's around the same time as Gordon McClendon's.
Who were these oilmen? Because I know, like for instance, Hollywood would come out and seek these oilmen for money. I know Billy Graham came down here in the 50s to seek money to make several of his films. I think Mr. Texas was one of them that was filmed in West Texas. So would we know any of these names as far as the oilmen, or are these just obscure West Texas oil guys that have the money to do it?
I can't think of any of the names right now. I bet if I backed up and found them somewhere, people would recognize them. One of the things I saw in the making of the Edgar Ulmer double feature, Beyond the Time Barrier, Amazing Transparent Man, was that because of the John Wayne shooting the Alamo down in South Texas, that several of the people involved with that shoot because that was a big thing in Texas at the time, that they almost filmed that movie in Mexico, actually.
Oh, wow.
True. And that because of the big hit that was, these investors contacted some of the people involved in the making of the Alamo. So the second unit director on the Alamo, Ray Kellogg, is the guy who directed The Killer Shrews and Giant Gila Monster double feature. Ken Curtis, who was in the Alamo, stars in one of them. That takes a big, one big production that kind of permeated through some power channels in Texas, including people who wanted to, these oil men who wanted to invest in something, saw what something like, create the production of the Alamo could do.
Well, did the Murchison family, the original owner of the Cowboys, actually get into film?
Murchison?
Yeah.
That one I don't know, but
Okay.
I'll look into that, though.
That's interesting, though.
I'll make a little note.
So it's say, oh, go on.
Oh, no, I was just saying, they're big out in East Texas, and some of the kids had various things that they did. But,
I'll look into that.
they were the original owner of the Cowboys.
So it's safe to say that John Wayne's The Alamo, which some people would say it was, it basically bankrupts John Wayne himself. Would you say that kind of was the springboard for all this other stuff that we see?
It seems to have started something, and getting a lot of Texans with money aware that, hey, there's money in this, in doing productions in Texas. Or at least getting Hollywood to come and making our own, for one thing, but getting Hollywood to shoot more things in Texas. There were a few standalone productions done. Rock Baby Rocket is a favorite of mine, which doesn't fit our particular genre that we're doing for Halloween, but
What year was that?
that was 57, I think.
57? Okay.
56 or 57, which is a regional rock and roll movie which features all the local versions of the Big X, the local version of Elvis, the local version of the Everly Brothers, the local versions of like Eddie Cochran or somebody like that. It's pretty amazing. But those people, they didn't make another one.
For our audience at home and for us here, I think, tell us who Gordon McClendon is, because he's a very interesting character. He's not only owned theaters, he owned a K-Box and radio, and he was involved in a little bit of everything. So tell us who he was as a man.
He is a broadcast pioneer, a radio innovator. From what I have read, some of the things he invented for radio was the fake baseball game. The fake live baseball game with canned sound effects. Yeah.
Awesome.
And also, according to what I've read, the top 40 format was invented by him.
Oh, wow.
Some other things I read about him was that he was a somewhat like Rush Limbaugh recently. He was a conservative commentator, broadcaster, and I'm sure, as most did at the time he was around, he probably railed against the commies in the 50s.
The 50s.
If he was that.
Big fan, was he?
Yeah. And one great interesting story I read about him once was that when they arrested Jack Ruby at the basement of the Dallas Police Department, one of the first things he said was, "Give me Gordon McClendon."
Oh, Jack
And-
Ruby said that?
Supposedly, according to this one story, this one report I read said that.
That's cool.
He made 3 films. The only ones that survived that everybody knows about are Giant Gila Monster, The Killer Shrews. He made another one called My Dog Buddy. But I don't think that survived. I don't think there's any prints of that anywhere. Occasionally someone I've seen ask, whatever happened to that one, but I don't know why he never made more. Maybe the Shrews and Gila Monster didn't do so well. I don't know. He did occasionally do some more producing later on. One of them was a movie with Sylvester Stallone called Victory, in the early 80s, like about 1980, I think, which is about a bunch of World War II POWs having a soccer game.
That's the one with Michael Caine as a
Yes,
right?
with Michael Caine with the Nazis. I guess sort of the World War II version of The Longest Yard.
Oh, wow.
And he was one of the producers of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Underrated movie, though.
Yeah, I don't know what any other features. I think maybe some TV. He's a pretty fascinating character. He shows up. I was just going to add. He shows up. Sorry to interrupt you, but he shows up in The Killer Shrews. Also, he's an actor in The Killer Shrews, and one of the 2 trailers for The Killer Shrews features him coming up and making a lecture like a college professor about how evil shrews are, and how giant killer shrews have been reported in Antarctica and they're moving towards Texas. So.
That's awesome.
So Kelly,
Yes.
talk to us about the city of Garland, your partnership with them. How did this come about, and why did you decide on these set of films?
Well, so it's how this came about in Garland. I was contacted by my friend Teresa Clapper, who works here in the Garland Arts area, and her and Kim Nurmi, they were starting a classic film series at the Plaza, and they knew I loved classic films, and they asked if I knew people that would be interested in introducing these films, and I said, sure, of course I do. So I introduced a couple of them, Meet Me in St. Louis, and then I got Gordon to introduce 1 or 2.
I introduced Abbott Costello, Meet the Invisible Man,
Yes.
and the Pink Panther, the original Pink
That's
Panther.
right. Yeah, and it was that was kind of the seed of it, because as the Garland downtown square is being renovated, and it will be done and have their reopening October the 14th with Leanne Rimes in tow, and then we come 2 weeks after that. So basically, it just kind of all really fit together so nicely. When I introduced, or I put together a proposal and said, well, these are the things I think I could really pull together. And this was it came from Texas. Idea was one of them. And we did broaden it out beyond it came from Dallas to be it came from Texas, so we could include more Texas films. And and that's really worked out, because we have Manos, Hands of Fate, which was filmed in El Paso. And then we go a little bit further down south to Tawakana with Don't Look in the Basement, Part 1 and Part 2. And then, I'm sorry.
Do you feel like Garland is more perfect for this compared to like the Texas Theater in Oak Cliff?
It just, I wouldn't say it's more perfect. I would say that the opportunity came here. And Texas Theater is to me, Texas Theater is like an ongoing film festival. It is an everyday, there's something there that you can't see hardly anywhere else, right? And so, it just kind of all came together here. And I pulled my buddies together for this. So, like Gordon, and then I worked with Joe O'Connell on Rondo and Bob. And how this got started on the horror side. First of all, it was going to be around Halloween, and so Tracy Claybrook, who is she's at Froxy, she owns Froxy and is an artist down there. She was like, oh, we've got to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that kind of became the linchpin, and then all the other films filled in around it. So it was kind of like, okay, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so horror, and then also a little bit on the sci-fi side, a little bit on the totally on the campy side, And yeah, it's just all really kind of come together. So like I was saying with Joe, with Rondo and Bob, I did publicity for Rondo and Bob when he brought that out during the pandemic. And then I've worked with Danny Gallagher and on his Maki Horror Picture Show. And I called him up and I said, would you guys want to do one of these? And he was like, yeah. And so it was just kind of, there's just been such nice synergy. Everything's kind of come together so wonderfully. And I just feel so blessed to have all these people in my life that are like, oh yeah, well, let's put on this show in the barn.
So talk to us about picking these titles, because a lot of these are public domain. And when you're dealing with public domain titles, you're dealing with quality issues. So talk to us about finding that perfect print, but also to deciding, yes, this would be the perfect film at this time. And then, following that would be the perfect film for this time. So talk to us a little bit about the decision making and
where you
source the prints from.
I did a lot of time sourcing prints all over the web. I mean, some I own, some I have in DVD, good quality, they were going to use. Some others, having looked at several different versions of, for instance, Beyond the Time Barrier, in various crappy editions all over the web, and found what I think is going to be the best one on a DVD release. And also, I'm trying to make sure they're all shown in the right aspect ratio they were originally intended to be shown in. So even though Beyond the Time Barrier was released in 1960, for reasons I'm not exactly sure of, it was projected in 1:3:3 in a 4:3 format, whereas even B movies and even its co-feature, The Amazing Transparent Man, was apparently shown in a different aspect ratio, which must have been strange for the projectionists at the time, but that seems to be what happened. And it was in a widescreen format, like a little wider, at least like 137 or something, 185. So I've been, going through many versions of something to find the best ones.
And excuse me, just a moment. I just want to say that for this festival, I mean, we are really going to manage people's expectations of the quality. No, these have not been restored. They are really kind of, and Gordon even told me, he said this is probably what they look like on the second week of them showing at the drive-in.
Some of them.
So, because once it goes, and you're seeing they're running and they just get scratched and they get the little
and that's a perfect point. Gordon, kind of touch on lastly, the importance of public domain film and showing these films in this venue, in a film festival venue, because a lot of people will poo-poo, oh, it's public domain, it's crap, blah blah blah. But talk to us about the importance of these films and why we need to see them in a theater here in Garland, Texas.
Well, there's up and down sides of something falling in the public domain. One of the more like a downside, because I was in the home video industry for nearly 20 years, is that there are gazillions of terrible copies of them in circulation out everywhere, because they didn't have to go through any master negative to dupe them, just get a TV print or dupe somebody else's. And then you have to do like what I've been doing, is going, the last few weeks, is going to find the best quality. But the good news about that is, and using as an example what was, till 1993, probably the most famous public domain movie ever was It's a Wonderful Life. And the reason it was able to amass such a huge cult was that anybody could show it.
Yeah,
because it was public domain. Every TV channel could show it. Anybody who had a 16 millimeter print of it could show it. It was on every cheap VHS label that ever existed until 1993, when they, by some kind of magic, restored the copyright. That's really hasn't even been done again since then. But because a lot of the ones we're talking about, like Gila Monster, like Killer Shrews, RPD, they've been seen a lot.
Yeah. But they've been seen a lot by individuals. You're sitting in your home, you're watching it, and you don't have a crowd with you. This is going to be the experience of having an appreciative crowd with you to enjoy these films. I mean, that's what I see as the biggest reason to see these at a festival. Because, well, first of all, so you get to see those, but then also we have Don't Look in the Basement 1 and Don't Look in the Basement 2, which Don't Look in the Basement 1 was shot in 1973 by S.F. Brownrigg, and then his son did a sequel to it in 2015. Well, those haven't been shown as a double feature ever. So we get to show that, I think that's just really, really kind of cool.
In your opinion, go a little bit forward in filmmaking, how is artificial intelligence going to impact the film industry?
Oh boy.
And bringing back some of these old films, like here lately, a lot of the black and whites have been put in color.
Right.
And so going forward, how is artificial intelligence going to affect the making of films?
Well, how they affect the ones we're showing, I mean, how they affect filmmaking in general is like we could spend a whole day just on that.
Yeah.
Easily. But I did notice that some of the ones we're showing are in colorized versions on YouTube. To me, that's blasphemy, for the most part. They were made to be seen in black and white.
Kind of like colorizing It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
Right.
or,
Well, but there's something about that, because there were so many people when Ted Turner did the colorized version of It's a Wonderful Life. There were so many people that were saying, "Oh, it's black and white. I don't want to watch it." I mean, just writing it off, just like. And and it's like, so we colorized it so people would actually,
Yes,
and then
those people are called morons.
yes, they are. Anyway, but that was sort of some people's entrance into classic films, and then realized, oh, it's a good film. That's a good. Anyway, so I know we need to wrap up, but just real quick. Before we get going, so I want to let you know that we've got passes on sale. They're
also have sorry.
That's okay. They're $50 for a pass, for a full weekend pass until September the 16th, and when they will go up to $60. You can go to garlandarts.com, and you will see the poster. On garlandarts.com, and click on that and go to buy tickets. And with the pass, we're talking to the downtown businesses and restaurants about having some discounts there for you, and so stay tuned on that. We also are planning to have a costume contest, which is why I'm wearing my ears. So this was to remind me to talk about the costume contest.
Can you buy tickets for individual films?
Yes, you can buy tickets for individual films, and they're between $10 and $15 for and not individual films. We have double features, so most of them are double features, except for the showcase films that are Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Rondo and Bob, and Maki Horror Picture Show. And just for a bonus, all three of those films are also going to have short films made by students from the Real Al film program at Garland High School. So we're thrilled to have them in with us as well. So anything to wrap up? Are you done?
Oh, pretty much. Oh, sidebar, I have a cameo in Don't Look at the Basement Part 2, so if you only see one.